All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been going over the Learn Web Development series from the Mozilla Developer Network. I am currently in the Introduction to HTML section that you see right here. And so far I've done the introduction, the getting started, the what's in the head, which brings me to the HTML text fundamentals section. All right. As mentioned there towards the top, one of HTML's main jobs is to give text structure and meaning, known as semantics, so that the browser can display it correctly. So what you're trying to do in the past, when you wanted to take a web page and break it up into sections, you would typically use divs, and you'd give those divs an ID usually, or maybe a class, but usually an ID to kind of tell what it was. So div ID equals navbar, div ID equals main content, div ID equal footer, etc. All right, but those words themselves, the word div is not really very semantic. So the idea is that stuff has been replaced. All right, it says here most structured text consists of headings and paragraphs, whether you're reading a story, a newspaper, etc., and they give an example here. It says structured content makes the reading experience easier and more enjoyable. So you can see when something starts and ends, for lack of better words. In HTML, as an example, you wrap each of your paragraphs in a p tag. You wrap your headings in an h tag. Well, there are other tags that you can use as well. It says, for example, in the story that's shown here, the H1 element represents the title of the story. The H2 elements represent the title of each chapter. And the H3 represent the subsections of each chapter. All right. And is this a wrong way to do it? Let's put it this way. It is a way of doing it. I'm not going to say that it's wrong or it's right. But it says it's really up to you what the elements involved represent, as long as the hierarchy makes sense. You just need to bear in mind a few practices if you create a structure like this, and they give you 3 of them in the bulletized list that you can see on the screen. First, preferably, you should use only one H1 tag per page. It's a top-level heading, so you can have 0 or more H2, H3s, etc. All right, but you shouldn't have more than one H1 on a page. Second, make sure that you use headings in the correct order in the hierarchy. In other words, don't nest an H2 heading inside of an H3. That just doesn't really make sense. Finally, of the 6 headings available, aim to use no more than 3 per page unless it's really necessary. And I'd even go a little further than this. I'd say not only that, typically don't go more than like about an H3 heading. All right, it's not that it's wrong to go further. It's typically the way that I do it. So why do we need structure? It says to answer this question, let's look at textstart.html, the starting point of our running example for this article. So what they have here is a recipe where they're just throwing everything in here. Now, is it wrong? No, it's just a way of doing it. And by throwing everything in there with no rhyme or reason, just throwing it in there, it kind of looks like you threw it against the wall to see what stuck, type of thing. And they mention part of the problem with this is there are no elements to give it structure, so the browser does not know what headings are, what paragraphs are, etc. And then they give you another bulletized list here, and it says, furthermore, users looking at a web page tend to scan quickly to find relevant content. In other words, you don't typically read a web page the way that you read, for example, a newspaper. So if I go out, and I've shown you this before, so if I go out to CNN.com and I'm looking in here, maybe what I care about in here right now, I don't have any, this isn't the case with me, but let's just say that I decide that I want some information on the conflict that's going on in Israel right now, where I'd probably either do this or I'd click here. All right. So in other words, I know exactly where it was where I wanted to go. Whereas, and it's not always the case with what I'm about to say, but quite often with a newspaper, you read through the whole thing. But when you're on a web page like this, you can pick and choose what you want to look at, and it's typically much easier to jump to right where you want to go. Okay? All right. Next, search engines indexing your page consider the content of headings as important keywords. So if you want to really increase your SEO or your search engine optimization, which as I mentioned before means that you want to get, so if I go out here, let's assume that I want to create a sporting goods website. And I come out here and I put in sporting goods. Well, I want, if you look on the top, we've got Academy and a bunch of other ones, but if I start looking in here, we've got what? Dick's Sporting Goods, Modal Sporting Goods, Academy Sports. If I want mine to appear on this first page, then I want it to be as semantically correct as possible so that I get as high of a ranking by the search engine as possible. Next, severely visually impaired people often don't read web pages, they listen to them instead. Now, I had a student years ago who was legally blind. He had 25% of his sight. All right. And what he had to do was basically this kind of thing to each page. He had to, set it up really big like this, even bigger if he could, something like that. And then he got real close to it to look at it on a big monitor. Finally, to style content with CSS or to make it interesting with JavaScript, you need these elements wrapped in relevant content. So this is what we're getting into right now. All right. So it says here, let's jump in with an example. It says add elements to the raw text in the input so it appears as a heading with 2 paragraphs. I don't really like doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm going to put in a heading. And I'm going to put in 2 paragraphs. Now, I haven't done this before, so I think this is the way they want it done, but we'll see. And another paragraph here. Oops. All right. Press escape to move focus away. So I think that's what they would want. So let's show the solution. And indeed, that's what they show. So it should come up and look then like this. All right. So why do we need semantics? Again, why is this stuff really that important? So we'll go through this. So much of the material that's in the rest of this is going to be semantic, but it's going to get us used to looking at the kind of tags, etc., that we want to use. All right, so why do we need semantics? It says semantics are relied on everywhere around us. We rely on previous experience to tell us what the function of an everyday object is. For example, it says, if you come up to a traffic light that's red, you stop. If it's green, you go. All right. In a similar vein, it says we need to make sure that we are using the correct elements, giving our content the correct meaning, function, or appearance. So in other words, you shouldn't be using an H1 tag to write a bunch of paragraphs. That wouldn't really make a lot of sense. You shouldn't have a lot of H1 tags on a page. The H1 tag, as mentioned here, should be a top-level heading for your page. By default, the browser will give a larger font to this H1 heading. You can restyle that to make it look any way you want with CSS, but that's not what we're talking about right now. But as mentioned here in this paragraph that you see near the top of the screen, its semantic value will be used in multiple ways, for example, by search engines and screen readers. All right. It says, on the other hand, you could make any element look like one of these. So we could do this and make this look also like it was a top level heading. As it says, it's using a span tag, which I believe we talk about a little later in here, but it's not semantically correct. All right. They've applied some CSS to it so that it looks better, but the system itself might not understand what it is you're trying to do. All right, let's talk lists. And we've mentioned these before in an earlier thing. We went through this. So let's look at this. So let's see. Let's suppose, I'm literally making this up off the top of my head right now. Honestly, I have no notes or no anything. But I'm going to go back into here. And I'm going to remove nothing. All right, I'm going to leave in here what we have in here. But near the top, before we've got our picture, I'm going to put in a couple things. And I'm going to put in here first an unordered list. And I'm going to put in here, let's see, first I'm going to put in a paragraph. And I'm going to call it Things to See in Missouri. Okay, now I'm going to put an unordered list in here. So let's literally go into Google here and put in things to, how about visit in Missouri. Missouri. Okay, and let's see if it gives us a list of things to do here. Whitehead West, Discovery Truman, guides and tours. What's in there? This is not at all giving me what I want. Event calendar, tourist attractions. Maybe that'll have it. I don't know. Here, there's 3 of them right here. I'm going to just grab these. So I'm going to literally just grab this so I've got something here, and I'm going to put the Gateway Arch, Silver Dollar City, which is in Branson, and the St. Louis Zoo. And I'm also going to put in here Busch Stadium, which is where the Cardinals play. All right, and now I'm going to come back into here, and I'm going to add, and I think we had 4 things. So let me grab this again. I hope I didn't remove it. I probably did. No, I might. Yep, I didn't. What do you know? So there's the arch. There's Silver Dollar City. There's the zoo. And there's Busch Stadium. So let me get rid of these blank lines in here. That looks pretty good. So I've got this. And I'm going to come back in and run my program again. Or look at my website again. So I love Missouri. There's nothing here yet, but let's refresh. And there it is. Things to see in Missouri. And let's suppose that I've got 2 weeks and I want to see all these. Well, does it really matter the order in which I'm going to do this? It could, right? It could matter. But let's suppose, for instance, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to grab Busch Stadium right here. And I'm going to type in driving directions. And I'm going to put where I am right now, which is 751 Parr Road in Wentzville, Missouri. And of course, I'll need the address for Busch Stadium. And there it is. I've been there, but I didn't know offhand what the address was. So there it is. and I'm going to get the directions. Now, hopefully you'd agree with me. I'm 40 some miles away. I'm starting here and I'm ending here. All right. Now order matters. Okay. Because if I start here, if I turn right on 7th Street, there is no 7th Street right here. So the order will matter. So if I grab this, and I'm just going to throw it in here. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of all these. I might want those, but I'm just going to get rid of them anyway. This is just to kind of prove a point here to you. All right, I don't need this. So this is my start, and this is my end. No, I guess it wasn't. You can see there's a lot of instructions getting here. Looks like there's a total of about 18 things that I have to do. Okay, in fact, I'll cut it down to 16. I'll leave that off, and I'll leave this off. There's my instructions. So I'm going to put an LI tag at the beginning of each of these lines. Somehow I remove the T from here. And I'm going to put an ending LI tag on each one of these. Now, again, I am expecting that the order in which I do these steps matters. So I've got here Busch Stadium, and I'm going to put down follow these directions. And I'm going to put in an ordered list in here. And I'm going to paste in what I just had in there. We'll move this over just so it looks, just so that it looks a little bit nicer. There we go. Get rid of that. Save, and let's go back to here. All right. Now, notice Busch Stadium follow these directions. Now order does matter. So in the first example, when I've got the things to see, it was an unordered list. Now the example that I gave before was a recipe, a simple recipe for chocolate chip cookies. And I said for the unordered list, it was the list of ingredients. So it doesn't matter if I get the flour first and then the sugar and then the chocolate chips, or if I get the chocolate chips first and then the sugar and then the flour, etc. But as far as the steps for actually making the cookies, you had to preheat the oven, then you had to mix the ingredients, then you had to put it in the oven, and then you had to take it out of the oven. That order matters. So when order does not matter, you use an unordered list. And again, notice what they have here. They've got a shopping list. All right, which would be like this. Now, when would you possibly want to create a shopping list and have it be ordered? Well, what if you knew exactly where things were in your grocery store? You knew what aisle everything was in. Then instead of doing it like this, you might want an ordered list, and you might want to put all the stuff. So if milk and eggs are in the same aisle, you might want to put those in that aisle. If in the next aisle over is hummus, you might want to move that up, type of a thing. All right. So they ask you, I'm not going to make this ordered list, unordered list. I think you can all do that. So with the ordered list, again, as they say, a list of directions, because order would matter. All right, so let's see, where are we here? We're at 1940, so we're just about finished with this one. We'll pick it up on this active learning, marking up a recipe page so that it looks the way we want it to look. Then we'll go into nesting, emphasis and importance. Hopefully we can do this particular section in just one word viewing. So I'll be back with that shortly.